Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink, episode 82, brought to you as always by our incredible partners at Waggle Golf. Everybody go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. Big episode today. We got Joe Smith as always around the corner. Managed to bring his colleague Mike Russo of The Athletic with as well to break down what we're seeing early on here in Minnesota Wild training camp, some of the team hopefuls, injuries, Kaprizov contract, you name it. And then a little bit at the end as well from on a couple weeks leave, Spoke Z, who is now back off of the concussion protocol. But without further ado, let's kick it over to Mike and Joe. This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it, that makes you say, wow. That was made for me, because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order.
Welcome back, everybody. Latest edition of Fellowship of the Rink with our good friend and colleague here, Michael Russo, here of The Athletic. Training camp is about a week underway here. I know we're both ready for it to be cut down to one practice as opposed to two or three. A lot of storylines to talk about this podcast, from people we thought stood out to the roster battles. But I know I wanted to get off the top just with Kirill Kaprizov, obviously dominating conversation a lot of times with contract negotiations or lack thereof. Just where do we feel it is right now? And did anything that was said in Kirill's presser or Billy's presser make you feel any different direction about it?
No. I think one disconcerting thing is that his agent Paul Theophanis came to the first practice and he sat with Matt Sells for 2 hours, and clearly nothing has come out of that. So, that's a bit concerning. Not that we know everything that's going on. Obviously, Paul's not talking, and Billy has made it, crystal clear in his presser that he's not going to be giving, constant updates. But everything that you and I have really looked at here in the last week and a half since we knew that this was all going on and that he turned down this monster contract is that there's no negotiations going on right now, and I don't think the Wild are just going to up their offer. Like there just comes a point too. Like, do you want to be here or not? And if you don't want to be here at 16 million, like suddenly you're going to want to be here at 16 and a half, 17 and a half, 18. Like, you're just going to keep on offering money. Maybe at some point they have to do that, but right now I don't think the Wild are inclined to do that. So, we'll see where this goes. I don't know what's next. I mean, do you have to just have a heart to heart with Kirill at some point if you're Billy Guerin and hope that and without his agent there, or and find out point blank, like, what's it going to take to get it done, or is this it? Like, and if it is, then what's the next step? Do you start talking trades and things like that? So I don't expect that we're going to get blow by blow, play by plays. But right now, I don't think that anything has really happened since day one of camp, when we both saw Paul Theophanis in the crowd talking to Matt Sells.
And I'm speaking from a place of ignorance, so tell me if I'm crazy here, but that feels positive to me. Like, that almost gave me the vibes from the outside looking in of, oh, Kirill is not happy that this got leaked. He doesn't like the direction of this, and now we've got a random spot appearance from Theophanis at practice. Is that common, or like, what's your read on just him showing up in that capacity?
No, it's not common, but he seems to show up all the time throughout the year. 4 or 5 times a year we'll see him. Last year at the end of the season, he was just standing in the middle of the press box watching the game. It might have even been Kirill's first game back with the team with 3 games left in the season. He just suddenly was there. So yeah, I think that Joe and I both thought that would probably be a positive thing, especially when we saw him and Matt Sells having a really affable conversation for a couple hours in the stands. I mean, I don't think they were talking about each other's golf games and things like that, but nothing has seemed to have happened since then, and I don't think it moved anything along. So maybe he just showed up at practice because he knew that Kirill was talking for the first time that day, and maybe lend a little support, give him some advice on how to handle things. Maybe tell Kirill to sort of, which he did, punt all questions about contract negotiations to him, the agent, which is difficult because he has not responded to comment to Joe and myself since this process began.
And my last thing on the Kaprizov front, just to make sure, I just don't know from your end, what do you guys think the deadline is, quote unquote, where like you should actually be worried if a deal's not done?
I don't know. I'm worried right now, Joe. I mean, I don't know about you. I mean, I would say opening night. Like if Kirill is really willing to risk injury and not bank 128 million guaranteed, I think I don't know what's next, because I really don't think the Wild are just going to keep on upping its offer. Again, I think that Bill and if I were them, I would talk to him about a shorter term deal, but he's given no indication that he has any interest in a shorter term deal. In fact, I get the indication that he does want a longer term deal. So I don't know where this goes, but I'd be concerned. But I'm also the one that I was the beat writer here when Marian Gaborik was here, and we saw how that went. And I'll be interested. We're both Joe and I are getting an opportunity with the other reporters to talk to Craig Leopold on Thursday night, but Craig was the owner at that point. So I want to ask him if he's worried about Marian Gaborik 2.0. And when I say that, I'm talking about injuries. So I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I Kirill had said, like, and he was himself in that press conference, and he was, jovial and affable more than I thought he would be considering the circumstance. He said, we have a lot of time, which I think to him, maybe he considers a lot of time, but I don't think for the Wild brass or Wild fans, they feel, hey, it's 2025 still, 2026, my contract's up. So I think there has to be some sort of line in the sand of a decision, right, left or right. Like, do you want to stay? Can we still push this forward in negotiations? Or is this just you saying, I don't want to stay? And then we can find plan B of like, okay, let's find a place it's not ideal, but find a place to trade you or find a place to get something for you. I don't think they can afford to go into the season and risk any injury, both, his point of view and for the Wild's point of view, like you mentioned, Marian Gaborik. So that'd be my concern level. If he's ready to punt it down the road, it's easy for him to say, but then like the team has to figure out, like, there's no plan for them that doesn't include Kirill Kaprizov. And if you're going to trade Kirill Kaprizov, very rarely you win that trade. I don't think you win that trade because your best player in that trade will be Kirill Kaprizov. So
not in a league where everybody has no move and no trade protection. I mean, there are a lot of teams that would love to trade for Kirill Kaprizov right now, and to do that, you'd probably have to give up a lot of money, which means significantly good players. But all these players have no move and no trade. They're not just going to, at the beginning of the season, waive that to come to Minnesota right now. One thing I wanted to, point out too that I think is a little naive on that's being speculated about there is that Kirill Kaprizov's waiting for Connor McDavid to sign to set the market. No, I mean, by all conversations, if Connor McDavid re-signs in Edmonton, he's going to do the Oilers a solid and make sure, because his priority is winning, that it's going to be at a really quality price, team-friendly price. We're talking 15 and a half, 16 million. So like that is extremely public. It's obviously speculatory, but this is based on, people knowing Connor and knowing his agent and things like that. So like that is not what's going on here. It might as a whole with all these group threes, maybe somebody's waiting for the first to go, but that is like, trust me, that is not what's going on here.
And I think we had a conversation earlier today, Mike. What's interesting about the Kirill Kaprizov situation is the Wild kind of got hurt by the new CBA in a sense where I think you wrote at the drafts, which we all thought at the time, that they had this big advantage of being off for 8 years versus 6 years if the CBA came in July. But now, like, as you could probably explain, like, didn't do them any good, any solids here.
No.
CBA.
No, absolutely. The last CBA screwed him with the cap recapture, and this one absolutely did too. You know, in the new CBA, the max term limit another team can sign somebody is 6 years. Well, that will not go into effect. They have different implementation plans for different facets of the thing. A batch of things start now. A lot of things start July 1, and a lot of things start next September 16, 2026, when the official beginning of the collective bargaining agreement starts. Of course, the term limits, which would have been a huge coup for the Wild, does not start until September 16, 2026. So next July 1, he will still be allowed to sign with 7 years for another team, or if traded, 8 years with another team. That does not help the Wild. The other thing that has really hurt the Wild here is, for the first time ever, they announced 3 straight years of the cap number. That has never happened before. Usually 5 days before free agency usually is when we know what the official cap number is going to be for the following year. So everybody knows it's starting in 26, 27, it's going to be 104, and 27, 28, it's going to be 113 and a half. So a lot of these agents are looking in, and, you know, and I'm sure Paul Theophanous is looking and be like, 16 million is not what he would get next summer on a 7-year deal, and it's not what he would get if it was 2-3 years from now. So, so the Wild, as usual, really, the new collective bargaining agreement really did not help them.
And how convinced are we that can't bring whether light or heavy is going on?
You know, I'm not going to make those accusations. I mean, you know, I think that you know, Elliot Friedman on his podcast has speculated a lot that maybe that they're assuming or know that certain teams out there are floating a price that they could maybe pay him in free agency. But a lot of this could be assumptions too, just knowing that the cap's going up and looking at teams out there that might be going after him. It's very similar to what we did with Marco Rossi this summer and offer sheets, is that, you know, you could figure out what are the teams that could afford it, what are the teams that could give up compensation. And I'm sure that any good agent, and we know that Paul Theophanous works very hard for his clients, is looking at it and say, all right, that team could maybe give you this amount, that team could maybe give you this amount, this team, if they make a couple trades or lose a couple players, could give you this amount. I think that's you know, that's stuff that's going to happen, but it's not that we know that that's going to happen. I think a lot of it is just assumptions.
Another couple of Russians are also big storylines in this training camp. Tarasenko was the big offseason find for the Wilds, basically given away by the Red Wings after a down season. And I know, Mike, you know, training camp scrimmages or practices in the first week don't tell the whole story, but it feels like he's made a really good impression so far on the staff and the team. And, you know, they're hoping to squeeze more out of him. And it seems like he's pretty motivated for this fresh start here.
Yeah, he's coming to camp in fabulous shape. He looks outstanding on a line with Eriksson Ek and youngster Liam Ogren right now. I've been really impressed with that line through every practice that we've watched and every scrimmage that we've watched. And Tarasenko is a big reason for that. You know, he looks like he could absolutely still shoot the puck. He had 4 goals and 2 assists in those 2 scrimmages that we saw last week. Eriksson Ek, as usual, complements any line that he's on perfectly, and he looks great on that line. And then Ogren, to me, has been just outstanding in camp. What I love is that he's shooting the puck. We're seeing his speed. He's not deferring to those 2 guys. At Sunday's practice, Joe, he had to have like a dozen goals, and we're talking like single-handed, like through traffic, whistling pucks. I mean, what we're seeing is that we all know that Liam Ogren has an NHL shot, but we're seeing him use it now. And I think a lot of that is learning lessons from last year, where he had a couple opportunities to play in the top 6 and maybe deferred a little too much to his more veteran line mates. And now we're seeing a guy that's willing to trigger it. So, you know, I think that he looks really good. And I think that Tarasenko, you know, again, we're not to make too much of what we're seeing in scrimmages and practices, but he certainly looks like somebody that can, you know, really make an impact, and he's going to play with really good players, we know, as long as he's healthy this year.
I mean, he has always played really well against the Wild, so.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can't beat him, join him, or the opposite, maybe.
I mean, that's why he's tearing up camp.
Yeah.
It feels like in Europe, and John Hines said today to us, like he just seems less overwhelmed now with the moment. I think we saw that a little bit in rookie showcase, that he had a little bit deer headlights look to him. How do you feel he settled in? And like with the way Ogren's playing and the roster set up, is there a space for him really on this team? Like, I think there's a chance that he can, but like you wonder what role is great for him. Is it better to be a 4th line in the Wild, not by Iowa? Like, I don't know. What's your impressions of him so far, and where do you think there's a spot right now for him?
I think he looks great. I mean, I loved the way, you know, I thought he really epitomized the team the other night in Winnipeg, where the first couple periods the team was not They were playing stagnant. They were playing slow. They weren't playing north. And then the third period happened and everybody got better. And I thought he was the leader of that. He just looked so much more comfortable. John talked today that on the bench, he was asking him questions and things like that. But to your point, Joe, without injuries, you do just wonder, are they really going to keep him as a 13th forward? Or are they going to try to convince him, not to convince him, I mean, technically he'd have to go to Iowa, but there is an out clause like a lot of Europeans have in his contract where technically his agent could re-sign him in the KHL or elsewhere in Europe. But are you really going to make that long-term decision if the Wild are saying, look, we just feel like he needs 3 weeks, a month in the minors? I think a lot of times players know if they're ready or not. The problem is like, is he going to get that opportunity? The hope is at some point in camp, he can maybe play with better players and fourth liners. But again, right now, if they're healthy, which they are, your top line is probably Kaprizov, Rossi, and Boldy. Right now, your second line, Liam Ogren, seems to be doing what he can to grab that spot with Eriksson Ek and Tarasenko. Hartman's had a really good camp up the middle on that third line with Johansson, who could technically be a 13th forward, with Marcus Foligno. Would you maybe give Urov a spot there? And then your fourth line right now is Brett Leeson, who is a PTO, with Nico Sturm in the middle and Jakub Trenyan. Could you maybe put Urov there? Do you want him as a 14 as a fourth liner? If not, if Johansson's not there, so there's a lot of camp left to see how these guys do. Tonight is a huge game in Dallas where they are bringing a really young lineup, playing a minor league goalie against the A squad of the Dallas Stars. So this is going to be a tough game for Danilo Urov. So we'll see how he handles that. But I want to see him in some home games with some really good players on his line. The problem is that they're trying to get ready for the season and they have their lines pretty much set. So we'll see if Urov gets that opportunity. But I really like the way that he has improved since the rookie camp.
And if I know you said the line was kind of set to be Rossi, Kaprizov, Boldy at the top. Was that a reaction to Zuccarello being out, or where was Zuccarello going to be slotting in to start?
Zuccarello was supposed to be the winner on that line, but they moved up Boldy, and at least in Michigan, they indicated to me when I was there for the U.S. Olympic camp that Eriksson Ek was going to start there. I will say that at day one of camp, John Hines kind of indicated that Rossi was going to eventually be the guy that they wanted to see there with Zuccarello on the right, because Eriksson Ek has had such good chemistry with Boldy in the past. So maybe that was going to be your second line. But with Zuccarello hurt right now and expected to miss the start of the season, they've unleashed this Rossi, Boldy, and Kaprizov line. And I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, Joe, but Boldy looks like he could have a freaking monster year if he gets consistent time with Kirill at even strength.
He's looked terrific and like a kind of a carryover from the playoffs when they were two dominant players against Vegas. So I know there's theories of not loading up and having one on each line, but when it works like that, and you have some more depth now with Tarasenko, and if Ogren can kind of shoot one of the best shots on the team, I think Liam Ogren has. So it's beneficial. I think as far as injury front, Zuccarello, we know will miss start of the season. Brodin's been skating with the group off and on. Like obviously, he looks like he's at least will be conditioning wise in good shape when the season starts. We won't be missing much time. See Bouillon return after missing the last few practices with upper body injury, took a puck off the hand. I guess my question is now for the young defenseman on the blue line. It seems like Juracek will be given a chance on the second power play in the exhibition game tonight and entering camp. Z Bouillon, we all assume or think he'll get that top power play spot running point there. Are we pretty set on those two guys most likely making the team and playing? I mean, I know Z was making the team, but like, I think Juracek making the team too, and like how often will he play, I guess.
I mean, a lot of it might depend on Zach Bogosian, right? I mean, they like Zach in the lineup. He adds a physical element, and so we'll see what happens with Juracek. I mean, Juracek was up and down the other night in Winnipeg, but so was the entire team, and I thought he got better as the game got along. I don't blame him at all for the penalty that he took in overtime. A lot will depend. Like we talked to John Hines today, Joe, about the power play units, and we're going to start to see that on Saturday. Wednesday is going to be more of a PK type of practice. But I'll be interested how Z Bouillon does and how David Juracek does in camp will really determine if Jared Spurgeon and Brock Faber on the power play. Right now, it sounds like they like to have Spurgeon on the power play. He's usually their most reliable defenseman. I get the impression that they really want, obviously depending on Boyum and Juracek, and then game situations, if one of them is in the box, health situations, I think they really don't want Faber on the power play to start the season. I think they want to lower his ice time a bit, manage it a little better, and really turn him into just an elite penalty killer that can help this team. The penalty kill is one area where Brock actually has not done very well at the NHL level, but yet we saw him at the Four Nations kill with Jacob Slavin and look outstanding there. So, can they really, if they lower his ice time and he's not worrying about power play, really focus in on being a great penalty killer and be better there? Because right now, the last couple of years, he's been on the ice for a ton of goals against on the PK. But I get the impression that they like to, maybe have even a Juracek Spurgeon on your second unit and then have Boyum on your first unit. I don't think they're going to just totally remove Spurgeon from the power play. I think that would be a mistake personally. But again, if you're going to have Juracek on the team, you got to put him in an area of success. And that is an area where he, was billed as being somebody that could add. He obviously has a great shot. He can make plays, as we saw on the Trenton goal last year in Colorado. And so it really will be fascinating to watch how he excels the rest of camp.
And on the blue line, have we been seeing pretty consistent pairing utilizations, or with Brodin out, have we seen a lot of shuffling?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of shuffling. I mean, we've seen Middleton with Faber. We've seen also, like if I were me, and I think that we're starting to see this. I think they want to go Boyum and Spurgeon and Middleton and Faber. I think just the safety net of Boyum with Spurgeon is something that you want to do with the young D until Brodin is back. But then it's from there. What is your third pair? Does Jack Johnson make the team with Bogosian? Can one of Bogosian or Juracek play, the left side? My guess is that if Jack Johnson makes the team, he might enter as the 13th, as the 7th D. But I will say, I thought Jack Johnson was really good the other night in Winnipeg. So, and we know that he is somebody that they have a high regard for. So maybe it is Jack Johnson with Juracek to start, or and every now and then maybe Juracek is replaced by Bogosian. We'll see. I know I know that they have a lot of respect for Bogosian, but I also think that they've talked to him about potentially being, are you okay if you're the 7th D this year? That's the way that John seemed to talk this summer. But sometimes in practice it's a little different if you have just a lot of respect for a guy, and also you think that maybe the one area there you're lacking in the lineup is physicality, and we know that's Bogo's best asset.
So Nico Sturm talked to us the other day, and I know you covered him before, Mike, but just what a fascinating guy. What a guy who's very descriptive and very honest with what he sees and what he does, and breaking down the penalty kill and different versions that he's played in his career, and talk about learning from faceoffs from McKinnon and Barkov, just picking brain. Like, he really seems like a really good cerebral player, and I'm wondering what kind of impact he'll have on the PK this year. I know John wants to tinker a little bit with the penalty kill, whether it's a slight system thing or personnel, and maybe having him as faceoffs and Boldy full time at PK will make an impact. But what do you see what Nico Sturm's impact will be, and like any other subtle changes to the PK?
Yeah, and I could see other personnel changes, like if Johnson makes a team, him on there. Brett Leeson is another PTO that played a lot of penalty kill in Anaheim, and so there are going to be some personnel changes if those guys make the team. In terms of Nico, when he turned down that 5-year contract from the Wild, at that point, he looked at the Wild lineup and just said, if I sign this deal, I'm not going to be any more than a fourth liner here. And he felt like he owed it himself to give himself the opportunity to move up in the league. And then he goes, he leaves here for a couple years, 4 years, starting in 22. Goes to Colorado, wins a cup, plays in San Jose, goes to Florida, wins a cup. And I think at this stage in his career, he realizes this is who I am as a player, and now I'm just going to really embrace that. And so he's come back here as a very mature player, not that he wasn't a couple years ago, but he had every right to just say, you know what? And I give him credit to turn down 5-year deal with that security, to just say, hey, I feel like I owe it myself to get a new opportunity and try to excel. I think that's awesome. What did it do for him? Not only did he got 2 Stanley Cup rings out of it, and now he comes back here anyway, and he understands and embraces who he is. So he's turned himself into a really quality penalty killer. He's turned himself into a really elite faceoff guy. He's really studied that part of the game, and as we all know, being around the Wild, that is one of their biggest deficiencies is penalty kill and faceoff. So 2 of their biggest deficiencies, and so the hope is, again, that he's going to be able to come here and maybe help stabilize some of their weaknesses. So we'll see how it happens. But, he's somebody that skates incredibly well. He adds size to this lineup. He does have some sneaky skill, I feel. He's just I think a really strong forechecker as well. So I think he's going to help out, and I think that John Hines is going to really respect his work ethic and probably move him up in the lineup in certain occasions as well.
What's it going to take for Hunter Haight to crack the opening night lineup?
Probably injuries in the opening night lineup, because again, I don't think that they're going to be the 13th. They're going to have a young guy like that on the 13th forward, but he's had a really, really quality camp so far. And I think that I know that, I was watching him work out on the ice today after practice with Marcus Foligno. I know there's a lot of respect level there, as Marcus always treats these young guys with, incredible regard. And he, that's such a huge coup for the Wild to have a leader like that would work with a kid like that after practice today. But again, if there's an injuries, there's probably not a room right now, but he has absolutely elevated himself on the radar. Had a really good rookie year, scored 20 goals for Iowa last year. But I do think that, even on a team that added Ube Kobel and Tyler Pitlick and have a chance to, maybe sign a Brett Leeson, even though they have these veterans that they've added to their roster to add some depth, I think Hunter Haight has shown in camp that he is really close to being somebody that they could call up and put in the lineup and feel very, very comfortable.
Nice.
One of the more interesting things that Craig Leopold said a few weeks ago at the Grand Casino Arena unveiling, other than Kirill Kaprizov contract stuff, was that he feels that they'll have some of the best goaltending in the league this year. And we all know what Gustavsson did to the last 3 years. And I think, they'll be approaching him potentially about extension sometime during camp. But how do you feel about the goaltending situation, especially Wallstedt, who he'll have to play 25 games or so with the condensed schedule this year. So So like, how comfortable, should Wild fans be about kind of what they have as far as depth concerning wise in the goaltending department?
Yeah, I look, until we see it in practice and in the regular season. I've liked so far what I've seen from Wallstedt. He's come into camp in great shape. Gus also looks outstanding in these practices. I read yesterday's Athletic where you tried to turn him into an $8 million player. We'll see if that comes into fruition. Wallstedt, I was a little concerned watching his first couple goals that he gave up the other night in Winnipeg, but then, man, did he just settle in. And I thought he looked good behind a team that was definitely had far from its A game the other night. And what I really loved about him was in that overtime. Joe, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the game, but there is an overtime play the other night where they're killing a 3-on-4 power play, and Hunter Haight broke his stick, and so it's essentially a 4-on-2. And they desperately needed, they couldn't clear the zone. They desperately needed Wallstedt to essentially freeze the puck, not just make a save. And he made a really difficult save off balance and was able to freeze that puck to allow, Hunter, allow a whistle for them to, get three players with fully unbroken sticks on the ice. And then it created the 4-on-4 when Juracek came out of the box, and obviously, which led to the Trenyan scoring on the 4-on-4 in overtime. So I was impressed. That could have really rattled him, those two early goals the other night, especially the second goal where, even though it was a bang play, and probably a seeing eye shot, he probably should have made the save. Look, he's come back in great shape. It seems like, as he always talks about, his mind is really clear right now as well. He knows essentially where he's going to be. And so I liked it. But until we see it in the regular season when it matters, one game in Winnipeg against their C squad as well doesn't really make a big difference.
Last question for me before our Waggle question is, with regards to goaltending, I think we've seen Gus establish himself as a number one goaltender. Is there any reason to wait a little bit, see how Wallstedt does before making a decision on long-term with Gustavsson? Or do you maybe make that distinction if the ask from Gustafsson is way too high, to where you're like, okay, when we have another guy we can look at to see if he can be that guy? Because it seems like the last 3 years he's supposed to be the bridge into Wallstedt. Now he's turned into number one. So you have a good problem of having two goalies. But
absolutely,
is there any way to that variable plays into this discussion whether to sign?
Yeah, I mean, to me, waiting makes no sense. I think that if you can get him done at a quality contract, I think you try it. Now, obviously, Overhart is looking at, at the huge prices that goalies are getting right now, and is going to be shooting for the moon here. And the Wild have to be comfortable with whatever number they're going to get. Let's put it this way: you're not getting them at 5.5 anymore, and not after Spencer Knight. And you're probably not even though Aiden Hills won a cup, you're probably not getting them in the low sixes. So he's going to have to get paid, and you have to be comfortable with that. The cap is going up. Obviously, we know that Kaprizov's going to want to get done. But I don't think it's illegal to have two great goalies. And if Wallstedt pops, all the better for it. Like, he signed for 2.2 the next 2 years, and then his next contract there, even if you re-sign him there, he's not a UFA yet. So if you can get Gus in the 6.5 to 7 range, let's just say, and then Wallstedt you re-sign in the 3.5 range. Like, if you have in a rising cap world, your goalie is making $10.5–11 million. That's not bad. And the worst thing that happens is you trade one of them. If they're both great, you're going to be able to trade them in a league that we all know everybody needs goalies. So I don't think that waiting makes a ton of sense. They've waited all summer, and the contracts have kept on going up and up and up and up. Not that Overhart was going to take some sort of lower deal necessarily. This is a veteran agent that knows where the contracts are going. But waiting usually only hurts you and makes things a lot tougher. Like, if he's a Vezina type winner this year, you're going to get him you're not going to be able to sign him at lower than Ottinger even. So like to me, you might as well get the conversation started now and see if you can get it done.
Question brought to you as always by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order. Mike, last time we had you on earlier in the summer, we were talking about how some of the CBA changes are going into effect now. Some are pushing out until September of 2026. And it just teed up the question of what happened? Why did the Minnesota Wild retroactively get punished for signing contracts with Parise and Suter that were legal at the time, when, like, we see teams right now sprinting to get people in under the clock for whether it's longer term or having bonus structure? Like, why was the league able to go back and retroactively punish the Wild?
Because, Bill Daly claims that he warned all these teams that we will come back after you if we deem that you were retroactively trying to circumvent the cap. And so they, what they warned people about is that in the next CBA, they were going to get rid of these backdiving deals that paid guys $3 million, $2 million, $1 million in the final days of their contract, when they felt that there was no real belief that those guys were going to fulfill those contracts, that it was going to essentially be circumvention, and that, guys were going to have, career-ending injuries or just, essentially retire early, which we had seen in the previous collective bargaining agreement. So that was the reason that when I sat in Bill Daly's office in 2013 or 14, after that was changed, that's what he told me, and it was on the record. I did a story. I remember I did a column in the Star Tribune that the Wild will eventually pay the piper for this. Okay, and the pay the piper turned out to be that Bill Guerin, the other part of the cap recapture, is that if you traded a player, you weren't off the hook. Now both teams would sort of be on the hook, and you'd still get the brunt of the problem if a player retired early. The only thing that did eventually change is that at one point the Wild were going to be dinged like an insane amount of money, and they came up with this thing that you would never be charged more than the AAV. So essentially that 7.5 would be 7.5 that you'd be not. Remember, at one point it was going to be like the Wild were going to
28.
Yeah, it was an insane amount of money where you wouldn't be able to operate your team. So what Bill Guerin decided to do is, instead of, even though at one point, remember, he came very close to trading Zach Parise to the New York Islanders, and then it fell apart right at the minutes leading up to the trade deadline. What he decided to do is just get fiscal, clarity essentially, and cemented, and he decided to go the buyout and not risk cap recapture by either going to Suter and trying to get him to waive his no trade and going somewhere else, or same thing with Parise. And remember, if they retired early, you would have still been dinged, even if they agreed to trades. And in Zach Parise's case, he did retire 1 year before his contract would have ended with the Wild. Now, who knows if that would have happened if he was here. Where Ryan Suter wound up playing the final 4 years of his deal and on multiple different contracts that wound up allowing him to really maximize his dollars.
Sure. So as I parse that, then the real difference is they don't view getting an extra year on term or having these different bonus structures that are at play today. Like that's not really viewed as cap circumvention, where signing a guy to a contract
No,
that
because
he's not going to
this is under the current collective bargaining agreement. It's very, very different. And from the NHLPA's perspective, so essentially the way it worked is that they have all these different changes in the collective bargaining agreement that technically starts September 16, 2026. But then they have different implementation plans that start, some start right away, like no dress codes. Some start next July 1, some start in September 16th. What the PA decided is they fought in these implementation plans that there would still be a 7-year max term starting July 1, that the bonuses would still be in place. And we already know that the 3 years of cap had already been previously announced, negotiating with the NHLPA. But it makes sense from the PA to fight for that because you have so many of these players that are up right now, incredible players. Kirill Kaprizov, Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Adrian Kempe, Artemi Panarin, Kyle Connor, Alex Tuck. I mean, over and over and over again. And so from the PA standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world that they fought but they fought to ensure that from those guys' perspectives that would not start until September 16th, 2026, that on July 1 next year, that they would still be allowed to sign 7-year contracts because they're trying to maximize the amount of money, not only for superstars in the league, but those specific players. And in the players' standpoint, it seemed completely unfair for them to change that term right away. And so the Wild get screwed in that circumstance, but it's perfectly legal. Technically, the collective bargaining agreement for all these things weren't supposed to start until September of 2026 anyway. So the PA fought for that in the implementation plan and clearly wound up winning it.
Well, I appreciate you coming on again with us, Mike, and we'll see you tomorrow at practice again. But appreciate you as always, and we'll talk soon.
No problem. By the way, Joe Smith is our NHLPA beat writer. So, I think that this is all stuff that he should be, writing about for the Athletic and, get in on how they won this.
Yeah, well, like as the first year NHLPA beat writer, they had this historically fast CBA negotiations where I didn't have to cover any lockouts or anything big tumultuous things. So it felt like, it became very smoothly once I took over the beat. So
yep, exactly. But the Wild gets screwed because of it. So there you go. I think you got a story on it.
It's all me. Thanks so much, and we'll talk soon.
All right, see ya.
Yeah.
All right, now a quick little snippet as well to give you a little extra content from this week's episode of Judd's Buds.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to think of this one either. Dustin Wolf just got 7.5. Was that what he got?
I did my homework on this one.
I
pulled every starting goalie that got signed in the past calendar year, and there's a metric ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go from the furthest back to current. Jeremy Swayman, 25 years old, 8 by 8.25. Linus Ullmark, 31 years old, 4 by 8.25. Jake Ottinger, 25 years old, 8 by 8.25. Igor Shesterkin, 28 years old, 8 years, 11.5 million. Mackenzie Blackwood, 28 years old, 5 years, 5.25 million. Logan Thompson, 27 years old, 6 years, 5.85 million. Kevin Lankinen, a backup, 29 years old, 5 years, 4.5 million. Karel Vejmelka, 28 years old, 5 years, 4.75 million. Aiden Hill, 28 years old, 6 years, 6.25 million. Thatcher Demko, 29 years old, 3 years, 8.5 million. Joel Hofer, arguably backup, 24 years old, 2 by 3.4. I just throw that in there for a bottom range. Lucas Dostal, 25 years old, 5 years, 6.5 million. Dustin Wolf, 24 years old, 7 years, 7.5 million. And the latest, Spencer Knight, 24 years old, 3 years, 5.8 million. So Filip Gustavsson, 27 years old. What's the contract? Answer, higher than anyone is comfortable with it being.
Yeah, that feels right. I mean,
6.5 minimum.
oh yeah, that's where I was.
I think 7 is kind of the like sweet spot. It's really going to come down to how many years does he require.
Yeah.
4, I think, is the sweet spot. He'll push for 5.
Right.
And he's got some leverage.
It is. The second I saw that Dustin Wolf 7 by 7.5, first thought, fuck yeah, Dustin Wolf, that rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you. Second thought, holy fuck. Like,
Now,
oh my God.
Yes, but can you argue that that's a little bit of a Kirill Kaprizov type thing? Like, in the sense that they have to overpay to get him there? Like, not only is their organization in total turmoil, but he's an American, which they haven't had a lot of success with Americans. I feel like there is some please stay here tax added.
Yeah, sure. And also, I mean, like, the thing with Dustin Wolf is, like, the only reason the contract, surprisingly, was because he's been in the league he's been a full-time NHL player for 1 year. That is the reason. But, like, I mean, he's been highly touted as far as goaltending prospects go for a couple of years. I think at least one AHL Goaltender of the Year award. Like, he's been, like, primed to be here. Then Markstrom goes. And obviously they make that move, or like Dustin Wolf graduates to the NHL. Like, they did they timed it perfectly for him. So the only reason that it was so jarring was the fact that it's literally 1 year as a goaltender, which you always like say goaltending's voodoo. Same time, I'm confident that I'm confident in Dustin Wolf. Just like the track record last couple of years. So, and again, with like how crazy the cap, like how much it just continues to go up, like assuming he can at least replicate last year, this upcoming season. Who knows what Calgary's going to look like?
Well, that's my thing, though. I don't mean to be rude because I hold no ill will towards Calgarians, but like, if it's a real organization, I'm a lot more like, it's more jarring for me. The fact that it's Calgary, I was like, yeah, that checks out. I mean, let's talk Tom Kurvers prospect showcase. Z. I'm going to be completely honest. I am literally going to narrow this down from my perspective to one name. I'm sure you got plenty of names you want to talk about, but I'm assuming you know what the one name is.
I would assume it's Adam Benak.
That is a great assumption.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great player. Like, again, not going to say much different than other people have before. Like, he is a very undersized, ultra skilled, incredibly smart two-way center. Can play wing, but he's really smart. He's got a ton of skill. He scores, makes a lot of flashy plays. And again, he is just a super smart kid. So oftentimes he's in the right place, making the right decision. Then he thinks, again, he just like the fact that he thinks again at such a high level, he thinks 2 plays ahead. So obviously he's going to pop, and he did pretty much every game of the showcase. Put up a couple points. But yeah, he's awesome.
He looked great. My question for you, did you watch him much in his draft -1 year?
Yeah.
So when Joe and I had Pronman on, like, obviously we had to ask him about Benak because he's very far outside of Pronman's "you must be this tall to ride the roller coaster." And he basically said, like, listen, for a guy that small to be someone that I project highly enough to be like, yes, they'll play in the NHL, I need to see special characteristics and special skills. He's good in a lot of areas. He's smart. I didn't see that special in his draft year. But his draft -1, I absolutely saw those things. So my question to you is, did you see something similar? Like, did you think that his draft year, he took a little bit of a step back from what you saw in his draft -1? Or is that being overblown by Pronman because he verified, oh no, this guy didn't grow. So yeah, he sucks.
Well, no, I mean, the thing was, so his draft year, he makes the move from Czechia to the USHL and had a really slow start.
Sick
I
jerseys.
thought he was really, really good. I played for Youngstown in USHL and like had a slow start. It's an incredibly tough transition, obviously, but he still ends up over a point per game. I think it was like 59 points in 55 games or something like that. So I mean, like he got better as the year went on. It's a tough league to play in, but you know, his draft -1, he's playing in Czechia. I think he was a point per game in the U20 as a draft -1. Ended up playing 18 pro games as a draft -1, like in Czechia, that first division, which is crazy. And I mean, looked at him at all the international tournaments he plays, and like he just lights up the score sheet for Czechia. I think he's got close to the record for the Hlinkas for scoring. And I mean, he's made the World Juniors a few times as a young player. That's also very impressive, obviously. Like, so he's just stood out and popped like everywhere he's been. Again, I think last year, just the beginning of the season in his draft year, like moving to the USHL from Czechia was just a big transition, especially as an undersized forward who was logging tons of minutes. So yeah, like I think like watching him in Europe really pop. Again, the fact that he played almost 20 pro games as a draft -1 was incredibly impressive. And then it was just a slow start to his USHL career. But by the end, he was more than fitting in. Again, he still ends up over a point per game. And now he's going to go, like they just got released today to go play in the OHL for Brantford. So he'll be playing alongside Jake O'Brien, which is going to be a ton of fun.
What do you need to see from him in the OHL to be like, yes, he's going the right direction? Like what's the bar?
Well, yeah, you're expecting a point per game season, obviously, especially on that team with who's we playing with. Like Brantford's going to be a really good team this year. Again, ideally, fingers crossed he isn't playing with Jake O'Brien potentially, but he definitely will be on the power play. So I think you're obviously expecting at least like probably a decent amount over a point per game. Obviously just be a go-to guy and both special teams. Again, like, yes, he's an undersized forward, but he's a really good two-way forward as well. It's not all offense. Like he's got a ton of skill. He can make hopping plays, but the fact that I think obviously because he's so small, he's had to be such a smart player his whole career. So that's lent itself pretty well to that two-way game. He can kill penalties. So obviously you're hoping they continues to work on the skating as well, but realistically, as far as production goes, you want him over a point per game in the USHL, in the OHL on a really good team, and just being a go-to guy in pretty much every situation for them. So you just want him to be out there making a difference and standing out night in, night out.
All right, we've already talked plenty about our boy Hunter Haight, who's already doing it with the Wild now. You talked about Yurov maybe not quite showing what he wanted, but he definitely progressed throughout the Tom Kurvers prospect showcase. Like William, we know what he is. We don't have to waste time. Are there any other prospects that stood out to you in a positive or negative light going up against either Chicago or St. Louis?
In the positive light, and we talked a little bit about this kid when I went back and watched a bunch of the tape from last year after they drafted him. But Lior Mamedovsky to me is a really, really fun player. Like just plays with so much energy, so much pace, insane high octane, just like nonstop. The effort's crazy, but like I thought he made a bunch of really nice plays. He was really good in like a short playoff stint last year for North Bay too. But he can score goals, he can make some plays, and he's a good two-way player. And I thought he stood out plenty. So I really enjoyed watching him play. And I think he also just got sent back to North Bay in the OHL, but I thought he stood out in a positive way. I noticed him pretty much in those games that he played in. So that was definitely one to monitor. He's a long-term project player, but I think there's enough there that like he's got like the foundational tools, and he's also just got the right attitude. I mean, again, the effort is off the charts with him. Like his tape when I was just going back and watching his film from last year. Like, it was very fun. He has one pace, and it is nonstop. It is high octane. It's very fun. But I really like Larry Mamedovsky. But yeah, I thought he stood out in a positive way in the Kurvers showcase.
Okay. Anyone else that stood out, good or bad, that we want to hit on before we transition?
I thought, well, I mean, and this is another player we've talked about for years now, but Kyle Masters, when he was playing, I thought he popped. Again, we'll see if he ends up playing in the NHL. When they drafted him, we said he was a really long-term type prospect, but I thought he stood out when I was watching him too. That
was a test because he's the one that I was like, what bits and pieces I could watch. I'm like, this is Z's boy. Mm-hmm. He's finally doing it. He's finally healthy and doing the thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it was, I can't remember.
Like, he is, like, if we're ranking, like, all of the prospects as your children, like, he's among your favorite children, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he was, like, the OG year one of this podcast. But I can't remember if it was his first showcase that he had after getting drafted, but I mean, he popped at that prospect showcase too. And it was, I think it was like right before he got traded to Kamloops. So I think that would have been actually the year. Yeah. His first training camp or whatever, his first prospect camp. I remember watching that because they did that, like the mini tournament or whatever. It was like the 3-on-3 thing. And he stood out pretty much every shift, made a ton of plays, and then he got moved to Kamloops, where it was just like, hey, it was all out, nonstop, north-south, go off Masters, and he did it.
All right. Appreciate you guys. As always, again, you show up every week. We appreciate you very much. Anyone that hasn't already, please subscribe, whether it's audio, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Or if you're more into the video stuff, YouTube for sure, where we do have full episodes of all of our shows. We've got snippets and clips. We've got interview isolations, and we've even got some highlight reels up for some of the prospects. Check us out, the SOTA Pod on YouTube. Otherwise, we are pretty much in the thick of it here now, guys. We're going to have stuff to talk about every week. Thank God, because the endless summer speculation started to get really, really old. So we will catch you back here next week. But until then, stay classy, stay to hockey.